Sometimes we judge people for being brave enough to put themselves out there, and it's just because we're too afraid to do the same. You might think they're showing off or trying too hard, but deep down, we're just jealous of their courage. When I was in high school, I was surrounded by theater kids, talented individuals who made me want to be a part of their world. I admired their passion, their creativity, and their confidence. I wanted to feel like I belonged, like I could be a part of something special. So during my senior year, I finally decided to take a chance. I told my friends, hey, you know what? I'm gonna audition for that musical too. What's the worst that could happen? They say no? But what if they said yes? What if I actually got in? That's when the real fear set in. The fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of success. What if I couldn't keep up? What if I made a fool of myself? Despite my doubts, I knew I had to try. I had to push past my fear and take a chance on myself. And so, with a deep breath and a nervous heart, I took the leap. As I think back to audition day, I still get that same uncomfortable shiver down my spine. I mean, I'd prepared, as well as someone with zero experience in choir, dancing, or theater could. But nothing, and I mean nothing, can truly prepare you for the sheer terror of walking into that auditorium. My stomach dropped like a fucking anchor, and I'm pretty sure I forgot how to breathe. What the hell was I doing? If I turned around and bolted then, I could have just pretended the whole thing never happened. But no. My friends, those theater kids I mentioned, they spotted me and came over, all smiles and encouragement. And just like that, I was fucked. There was no turning back now. It was do or die, and let me tell you, I really, really wanted to die. My heart, it was racing, my palms were sweating, and I'm pretty sure I forgot how to speak. But I plastered on a fake smile, shoved those butterflies down, and pretended that I wasn't about to piss myself. Yeah, I was doing this. Fuck. Stage 1. I had 2 monologues ready to go. One funny, one serious. Google Daddy said that's what I needed, so I went with it. I practiced until I could recite them in my sleep, but let's be real. It's easy to memorize lines when you're alone in your room. It's a whole different story when you're standing in front of a panel of judges, your heart racing like a jackrabbit. But hey, at least I had prepared, sort of. Stage 2. Then came the singing. We got a song and we were told to follow the notes. Easy peasy, right? Wrong. I can carry a tune, but reading sheet music, that's like asking me to solve a math problem blindfolded. I stared at those notes like they were a foreign language, my mind going blank. Panic set in, my heart was racing like a runaway train. I was screwed, and I knew it. Stage 3. But then there was dancing, my saving grace. I'm not a trained dancer, but I can keep rhythm, and I'd been practicing my Beyonce moves in secret. If there was dancing involved, I was reasonably certain I could fake it till I made it. I mean, how hard could it be, right? It's not like I was trying out for the ballet or something. Just a little hip swiveling, some arm waving, and voila, I'm a dancer. Sort of. To be honest with you, I blinked, and the audition process was done. You know that moment when you're so crippled by fear but charged by adrenaline? Your fight or flight response starts to trigger in your body, and time passes and you just do things. You react, you respond, you survive. That's what happened to me during that audition. I was on autopilot, trying to keep up with the chaos in my head. The singing went as well as I could have hoped, which isn't saying much. I mean, I didn't completely embarrass myself, but I didn't exactly shine either. The time we were given to practice allowed me to run to a nearby piano and try to figure out the melody. I plucked the notes out as best as I could, trying to commit them to memory in my own harebrained way. But let's be real, it wasn't good. I was stumbling over the notes, trying to find my pitch and praying that somehow, some way, it would all come together. But it didn't. The pianist for the audition process had to restart for me twice because I missed my cue. Twice. The shame, it still burns my face. I was so caught up in my own anxiety that I couldn't even get that right. When I finally finished my turn, I could still feel the knots in my stomach and I was just happy to get off the stage. I mean, how fucking embarrassing is it that during your own audition, you're more excited to see what the other people do? So I knew I was in trouble. So I'm sitting down in the audience, watching as friends and acquaintances take their turns on stage. There are only a handful of us who aren't theater choir veterans, and I can't help but cringe as I watch them struggle through their auditions. I wince in empathy knowing that I probably looked just as lost and terrified up there. It's like we're all in this collective nightmare together, united by our shared ineptitude. Empathy is a really weird thing, because it means you've been in those shoes before. You know what it's like to feel that same crushing fear and self-doubt, and when you see someone else going through it, it's like your body remembers the sensation all over again. You feel it in your bones like a shiver that won't shake off. I saw the crestfallen faces of my fellow non-theater folks, and I knew exactly what they were feeling. It was like looking into a mirror, reliving my own humiliation all over again. And then there was the theater kids, oozing confidence and talent, like it was their birthright. They strode up on stage like they owned the place, their voices soaring. It was like they were speaking a different language, one that the rest of us could only pretend to understand. We weren't allowed to clap for people when they finished singing, but we were encouraged to do jazz hands instead. Have you ever seen reluctant jazz hands in a competitive environment before? It's like the audience is saying, "Yay, you did it. Your turn's over now. Thank God." Remember, your incompetency, it's a disease. And we're all just trying to survive this train wreck together. So leave. It was funny, in a way, to see the shell-shocked post-war expressions of my fellow "holy shit, why are we here" participants. We all looked like we'd just gone through a traumatic experience, which we had. It was like we'd all been through a collective baptism by fire and come out the other side scarred, but somehow more connected. It was also comforting. Embarrassing yourself alone is one thing, but embarrassing yourself with other people who are equally uncomfortable, whole different story. We were all in this together like it was high school fucking musical, like a group of soldiers who'd survived a battle. And I'm so thankful to this day that they were also present for our confidence hazing. Audition. There was a kid who sat next to me, a girl I didn't really know. She was one of the traumatized victims like me with no experience and a whole lot of fear. She stared at me, knowing that I had done equally as bad, if not worse, and asked in a barely audible whisper, "Do you think we've got a chance?" I decided to be honest because what's the point of sugarcoating it? I said, "Probably not. I mean, let's be real, we just bombed our auditions." But then I added, "But hey, at least we're in this together, yeah?" And she smiled just a little bit and nodded. And in that moment, we formed a bond of shared humiliation and mutual understanding. It was like we'd both been through a secret initiation ritual and come out the other side as unlikely friends. I never spoke to her again. So, that tightening sensation in my chest, it began to grow again, like a weight was settling in. I liked singing. I really, really did. It was a part of me, a way for me to express myself and connect with others. I loved humming along to my favorite tunes, belting out the latest pop song in the shower, and even attempting to rap like Nicki Minaj. But now, as I stood there, my confidence was crumbling. The audition had exposed my insecurities, and I was starting to doubt everything. The crippling anxiety in my head was screaming, "Why do you like to do this when you're not even good at it?" It was like my own personal hate gremlin taunting me with my inadequacies. I tried to reason with it to come up with some kind of defense, but I came up empty. "Good question," was my response. "I don't have an answer." At the very least, I thought, this confidence destroying audition was about to be over for me. I reasoned that there was no way I was going to make it to the third stage, dancing. They would call out the names of the kids who actually did well in the singing challenge, and I could slink away, tail between my legs, and forget this whole ordeal ever happened. I was stronger for doing it, right? But no. It turns out I had a massive misunderstanding of the audition process. Apparently, we were all going to learn the choreography, regardless of our earlier performances. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? No, no, no. This can't be happening, I thought to myself. But it was happening, and I was stuck in this nightmare, forced to confront my fears and doubts head on. This experience was probably the only part that boosted my confidence. We stood in front of the dance teacher, a crowd of both experienced and completely inept. We were a bunch of awkward teenagers trying to find their footing. But she was different. She ran us through the choreography with a gentle grace. Her movements were fluid and effortless. She was patient and kind, encouraging us to keep trying even when we messed up. Apparently, she was a fan favorite among the theater kids, and it was easy to see why. She had a warmth and energy about her that was infectious, and I found myself smiling along with her, feeling a sense of joy. I didn't mention the director earlier because honestly, he had a bad reputation. Mr. Smith was just a lot. He stalked through the hallways of my high school with a stone face, like he was perpetually disappointed in the world. I half expected the rest of the theater staff to be just as uptight, and maybe that affected my psyche more than I'd like to admit. I wasn't wrong, though. Besides Mr. Smith, there was the choir teacher who looked like she'd gone through hell and lost her child in World War II or something. And the pianist, she was a cranky old lady who looked like she was just excited to leave. But the dance teacher, she was different. It gave me whiplash, actually. I wasn't used to seeing someone so full of life and energy, especially in a place like this. High school was a graveyard, a soiree of walking corpses. In contrast, she was a breath of fresh air. And for the first time that day, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could do this. Maybe I could actually make it through this audition without completely embarrassing myself. The burst of confidence was unexpected, but welcome. I glanced at my peers, the chaotic bunch that didn't know what they were doing, and I pretended not to look at my competition, the theater kids who had experience. But I couldn't help myself. I sneaked a peek, and what I saw filled me with a shred of righteous joy. A couple of them were struggling to dance along. Their movements were awkward and forced. This? Oh, this was a weakness I could capitalize on. Fuck my singing. I was going to position myself as a dancer. The choreography was easy and I poured my newfound confidence into it until it was fit to burst. What would Beyonce do? It was a question and mantra that had pushed me forward many times in my adolescence. Well, Beyonce would activate Sasha Fierce and shine brighter than anyone else in the room. So that was what I was going to do. I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins as I launched into the choreo with renewed energy and passion. I was going to own this dance floor and I was going to make sure everyone noticed. The theater kids might have had experience, but I had something they didn't. Years of watching Beyonce on YouTube. I was like a Beyonce superfan, and I was ready to channel all that knowledge into this audition. But in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have been that confident. I mean, watching Beyonce videos is one thing, but actually performing like her is a whole different story. And I was still a nervous, awkward teen trying to find my footing. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I killed the dancing part of the audition. I was wearing a baseball hat at the time, and I remember throwing it to the side at the start of my performance like I was shedding my disguise. I contorted my body to the movements. My limbs were just the same as the dance teachers, fluid and flexible, as if I was born to do this. And even though the choreography was still basic, I prowled the stage with swagger. I owned that space. And everyone in that fucking room knew it. I even saw Mr. Smith's eyebrows raise in surprise, his expression softening for a moment before he regained his usual stoic composure. He began to write down in his notes, his pen scribbling furiously. It was a stark difference to his reaction towards my singing ability, which had been met with a bemused expression and a polite nod. But now he was paying attention, and I had him in my corner. I think the reason why I was able to project this type of confidence was that I felt like I had nothing to lose. In my mind, the audition was already over. I had failed the singing part, so I already met my expected outcome. I had prepared myself for rejection, and in doing so, I had freed myself from the pressure of perfection. I'd given myself permission to let go of the need to impress, to surrender to the moment, and to simply enjoy the experience. So I allowed myself that moment of reprieve from my inner hate gremlin, that constant critic that loves to remind me of all of my shortcomings. I silenced its voice, and instead I allowed myself to have fun. I let go of my fears, my doubts, my anxieties. I embraced the thrill of performing. The audition concluded and we were finally allowed to clap, relieved to abandon those awkward jazz hands. I don't think I ever want to do jazz hands again. I don't think I've done them since. They were a cruel torture device, devised to humiliate nervous auditionees. I walked out of that room thinking there was no way I was going to get in, despite my impressive dance performance. It was fair to say that I wasn't well-rounded enough, and my lack of experience was going to hold me back if they took me on. I mean, my singing was subpar, and my acting skills were virtually non-existent. I was a dancing specialist, and that's it. So imagine my chagrin, my shock, my utter gay disbelief when I looked at the cast listing and saw my name on it. I'm not gonna lie and say I got a main part, that would have been a stretch. But I got handed multiple roles, each with big moments in the overall musical. I was positioned to be a showstopper, a scene stealer. You're fucking kidding. God damn it, they said yes. I must have done something right, despite my doubts and fears. I was gonna be a part of this musical, and I was doomed.